On Halloween night in a small town called Haddonfield, Illinois, a young boy named Michael Myers dresses up as a clown. For no clear reason, he kills his older sister, Judith, with a kitchen knife. After this terrible event, Michael is sent to a place called Smith's Grove Sanitarium, where he stays for the next 15 years. Fast forward to October 30th, 1978. Michael's doctor, Dr. Sam Loomis, and his assistant, Marion Chambers, come to the sanitarium to take Michael to court. But Michael escapes, steals Dr. Loomis's car, and goes back to Haddonfield. Back in Haddonfield, Michael kills a mechanic to take his clothes and robs a hardware store for a white mask, some knives, and rope. The next day, on Halloween, Michael starts following a girl named Laurie Strode. Earlier that day, Laurie had dropped off a key at the old Myers house with her young neighbor, Tommy Doyle, because her dad, a realtor, was trying to sell it. Throughout the day, Laurie notices Michael watching her. But her friends, Annie and Linda, think she's just being silly. Meanwhile, Dr. Loomis arrives in Haddonfield, knowing that Michael is up to no good. He talks to Sheriff Lee Brackett after discovering that someone stole Judith Myers' headstone from the cemetery. Loomis tells the sheriff that Michael is dangerous and might hurt people again. The sheriff agrees to watch the area, while Loomis waits near the old Myers house, expecting Michael to show up. Later that night, Laurie babysits Tommy at his house, while Annie looks after a girl named Lindsay Wallace across the street. They don't know that Michael is following them. When Annie's boyfriend Paul calls her to be picked up, she decides to drop Lindsay off with Laurie. As Annie gets into her car, Michael, who is hiding in the back seat, grabs her and kills her. Not long after, Linda and her boyfriend Bob arrive at the Wallace house. After they are together, Bob goes to the kitchen for a drink, but Michael attacks him, stabbing him and killing him. Michael then disguises himself as Bob by putting on a ghost sheet and returns to Linda. When Linda playfully teases him, he doesn't answer, which confuses her. Linda calls Laurie for help, but before Laurie can talk much, Michael strangles Linda using the phone cord. Meanwhile, Dr. Loomis finds the stolen car and searches the streets, feeling uneasy. At the same time, Laurie goes to the Wallace house and finds the dead bodies of Annie, Bob, and Linda around Judith Myers' headstone. Scared, Laurie tries to hide in the hallway, but Michael suddenly appears and attacks her, cutting her arm. Frightened, Laurie escapes and runs to the Doyle house. Michael breaks into the Doyle house and attacks Laurie again. Even though she is scared, Laurie fights back, using anything she can find, like a knitting needle and a metal hanger, to defend herself. But Michael keeps coming after her. Just as Michael is about to hurt Laurie again, Dr. Loomis sees Tommy and Lindsay running away from the house. Without thinking, Loomis shoots Michael 6 times, making him fall off the balcony. But when Loomis checks the spot where Michael fell, he is gone. As Loomis looks into the darkness, Laurie cries in fear, realizing the nightmare is not over. Jumping to October 29, 2018, Michael Myers has been locked up in Smith's Grove Psychiatric Hospital for 40 years since his rampage in Haddonfield. He is about to be moved to a maximum security prison. True crime podcasters Aaron Corey and Dana Haynes visit Michael in the hospital to learn more about him. Aaron shows Michael the mask he wore during the 1978 killings, but Michael doesn't react. The next day, while Michael is being moved, he makes the bus crash. After escaping, he kills a father and son, steals their car, and heads back to Haddonfield again. In Haddonfield, Laurie Strode has spent the last 40 years living in fear of Michael. She rarely leaves her heavily secured home and drinks a lot. Her fear of Michael has damaged her family life, leading the state to take her daughter Karen away when Karen was just 12 years old. The only family member Laurie still talks to is her granddaughter, Allison. On the morning of October 31st, Michael sees Aaron and Dana at Judith Myers' grave. He follows them to a gas station where he kills them and a mechanic to steal his clothes. Michael then finds his old mask in Aaron's car, returning to his scary self. Meanwhile, Deputy Frank Hawkins, the officer who caught Michael in 1978, warns Sheriff Barker about Michael's escape. Laurie also learns that Michael is free again and tries to warn her daughter, Karen. However, Karen doesn't believe Laurie and tells her to forget about the past. Later that night, Allison catches her boyfriend, Cameron, cheating on her at a costume party. Upset, she leaves with his friend Oscar. Meanwhile, Allison's best friend Vicky is babysitting a young boy named Julian when Michael suddenly appears and attacks them. Vicky bravely gives her life to protect Julian, but Michael kills her. Her boyfriend Dave is also killed during the attack. Deputy Hawkins and Laurie hear about the attack on the police radio and hurry to the scene. When Laurie arrives, she finally sees Michael after 40 years. She shoots him in the shoulder, but he escapes. Dr. Ranbir Sartain, Michael's current doctor, convinces Sheriff Barker to let him help find Michael. As Allison walks home from the party with Oscar, Michael finds them and kills Oscar. Luckily, Deputy Hawkins and Dr. Sartain arrive just in time to save Allison. Hawkins tries to finish off Michael, but Sartain, who wants to understand Michael better, betrays him. He attacks Hawkins and leaves him hurt, revealing that he helped Michael escape to observe him. However, his plan fails when Michael kills him. Allison manages to escape. Michael then attacks two police officers who arrive, killing them both. He drives their police car to Laurie's secure house, where Laurie, Karen, and Allison are gathered. When Laurie's son-in-law, Ray, steps outside to greet what he thinks are police officers, Michael strangles him to death. Laurie quickly moves Karen to safety and prepares for a final fight with Michael. She injures him but gets stabbed in the stomach and is pushed off the balcony. When Michael checks her body, he finds that Laurie has vanished. Just then, Allison arrives and calls out to Laurie, distracting Michael. This gives Karen the chance to shoot Michael in the jaw. Laurie then comes back and attacks Michael, forcing him into a trap. Together, Laurie, Karen, and Allison trap Michael in a hidden safe room. They set the house on fire, trapping Michael inside. Laurie says goodbye to him before feeling too tired to continue. Karen and Allison help her escape by hitching a ride to the hospital. The last scene shows the burning house, but Michael is missing. After the credits, you can hear Michael breathing, hinting that he survived somehow. In a flashback to October 31, 1978, Deputy Frank Hawkins accidentally shoots his partner while trying to protect him from Michael. He also stops Dr. Samuel Loomis from killing Michael. 40 years later, on October 31, 2018, Deputy Hawkins is found barely alive by Cameron Elam after Sartain stabbed him and left him for dead. Cameron calls for help, and an ambulance rushes Hawkins to the hospital. Meanwhile, Tommy Doyle gathers with other survivors of Michael's attacks to remember the 40th anniversary of his imprisonment. They all survived encounters with Michael in 1978. While they remember the past, a disaster happens elsewhere. Firefighters responding to the fire at Laurie Strode's house accidentally let Michael out. Michael brutally kills the firefighters before escaping into the night. Laurie, her daughter Karen, and granddaughter Allison are taken to Haddonfield Memorial Hospital, where Laurie has emergency surgery for her injuries. While Michael continues to kill people in Haddonfield, Tommy, Marion, Lindsay, and Lonnie learn that Michael is back. At a bar, a woman named Vanessa thinks she sees Michael in her car, but the driver crashes and runs away before anyone can catch him. Angry, Tommy gathers a mob of Haddonfield residents to hunt down and kill Michael once and for all. Karen learns that Michael survived the fire, but keeps this from Laurie to let her recover. Allison makes up with her ex-boyfriend Cameron and decides to join Tommy's mob, wanting to get revenge for her father's death. Laurie and Hawkins wake up in the same hospital room and talk about their past. They also warn the townspeople to stay inside because Michael is still on the loose. Outside the hospital, Michael kills Marion, Vanessa, and her husband Marcus one by one. Lindsay escapes and is later found alive by Tommy, Lonnie, Cameron, and Allison. The group investigates Michael's movements and victims, realizing he is heading to his old childhood home. Tommy takes Lindsay to the hospital, where they reunite with former Sheriff Lee Brackett, whose daughter Annie was one of Michael's victims in 1978. Tommy tells Laurie that Michael has survived, preparing her for the upcoming fight. Meanwhile, Michael arrives at his old house and kills the new owners. As Laurie gets ready to leave the hospital, chaos breaks out when Lance Tavali, a fugitive from Smiths Grove Psychiatric Hospital, arrives. He was on the same bus as Michael when it crashed, but the scared mob mistakes him for Michael. Tommy's group chases after Lance in the hospital, thinking he is the real killer. Karen realizes Lance is not Michael and tries to calm the angry crowd. But Lance, scared and confused, jumps out of a window to his death because of the chaos around him. Laurie wants to end Michael's terror and tells Karen to join Tommy and Sheriff Brackett to help find him. Meanwhile, Lonnie goes into Michael's old house alone, but Michael kills him. Soon after, Allison and Cameron rush in and find Lonnie's body. Before they can react, Michael attacks them. Cameron fights back, but Michael kills him brutally. Just when Michael is about to finish off Allison, Karen shows up and stabs him in the back with a pitchfork. She grabs his mask and teases him, making him follow her away from Allison. Karen leads Michael into a trap where Tommy's group is waiting. They ambush Michael and attack him all at once. After a tough fight, they think they have finally killed him. But as the crowd starts to leave, believing it's over, Michael gets back up. He attacks and kills the remaining people in the mob, including Tommy and Sheriff Brackett. Meanwhile, at Michael's old house, Karen thinks the danger is past and goes upstairs to check things out. She stands in Judith Meyer's old bedroom when Michael, still alive and dangerous, suddenly appears. In a shocking moment, he stabs Karen to death in the same room where his madness all began. As Lori looks out of her hospital window, she doesn't know about the new tragedy happening just a few blocks away.